It's Thursday, the 9th of September 2021. Welcome to the Fear and Greed Business Headlines, the business news you need in just 5 minutes. I'm Sean Aylmer. And if 5 minutes isn't enough, then find more news and interviews in our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. In today's headlines, the Prime Minister and Federal Health Minister are in hot water about why they didn't do more to access Pfizer jabs when the country needed them. Plus, retailers stock up on goods ahead of Black Friday sales, but risk getting stuck with unsold products. The number of people with 2 jobs hits a record high, and tech heads rejoice. The new iPhone is coming. Our lead story today, Prime Minister Scott Morrison and the federal government is under growing criticism over its handling of the COVID vaccine rollout after emails show that the Health Minister Greg Hunt didn't take a meeting with Pfizer executives in the middle of last year, potentially missing the opportunity to access the jab earlier than eventuated. Pfizer sent the email on June 30 last year suggesting a meeting between the health department and the pharmaceutical company. 3 days later, the department responded saying Mr. Hunt would not attend meetings. Eventually, a meeting was held with local representatives of the company on July 10, and then almost 2 weeks later, Pfizer wrote to the department saying the US and UK had signed deals with the group. Mr. Hunt's office didn't meet with the company until August 4. Australia initially went with AstraZeneca and then signed a deal with Pfizer in November. This is politically very challenging for the government. Australia has lagged the rest of the world in the race to vaccinate. While we are pushing towards 70% vaccination rates so as to start opening up the economy, other nations are already rolling out booster jabs. Mr. Morrison originally said it wasn't a race to vaccinate. Turns out he was wrong. This could be politically very damaging for the federal government. In overseas news, coronavirus-related deaths in the United Kingdom jumped by nearly 40% in the first week of September as the beginning of a third wave of COVID for the country emerges. Hospital admissions increased by 14%. Meanwhile, the head of the World Health Organization is calling for a moratorium on booster shots in rich countries so developing nations can get access to vaccines. Scaling back of the US Federal Reserve's bond buying program could be appropriate later in the year, according to a senior official. While the Delta variant of COVID-19 continues to pose a risk, the outlook for inflation was better and the jobs market was picking up. Central banks around the world, including the Reserve Bank of Australia on Tuesday, are starting to talk about slowing bond purchases and tightening monetary policy ever so slightly. And the Taliban has formed its first caretaker government since taking control of Afghanistan at the end of last month. It isn't necessarily one the West agrees with. Several members of the new government have been targets of sanctions for terrorism, while the Interior Minister is on the United Nations Most Wanted list. Locally, the Morrison government will begin issuing certificates allowing fully vaccinated Australians to travel overseas within weeks. The vaccination certificate will be available in either digital or printed form from next month, and Canberra is currently in talks with other nations to determine which vaccines will be recognised in travel bubble arrangements. Travellers' immunisation status will be linked to their passport chips. Retailers are stocking up ahead of the Black Friday sales, with inventories 20% higher than 2 years ago. Harvey Norman, JB Hi-Fi, Super Retail Group, The Reject Shop, Wesfarmers, Kmart and Bunnings chains, footwear retailer Accent Group and appliance maker Breville have boosted stock levels as a buffer against global shortages and shipping delays, according to a report in the Financial Review. The downside, as Kogan.com found out earlier in the year, is that if people don't buy goods, then the retailers get lumped with unsold products. BHP said it contributed more than $34 billion to the Australian economy last financial year, including $11 billion to suppliers, $6 billion in dividends and interest payments, and $12 billion in tax, royalties and other payments to governments. It also paid employees a total of $4.5 billion. Big numbers. The number of people holding more than one job has risen to its highest level in at least 27 years. During the June quarter, 6.5% of employed people had a second job, according to the Bureau of Statistics. That was up from 4.9% a year earlier in the middle of the pandemic. The ABS series started in 1994, and if you look at the long-term trend, it's been pretty steady. Then it tumbles in 2020 and surges in 2021. Maybe people shocked by the impact of the pandemic are working as much as they can. And one of the most exciting days of the year for tech heads, the launch of the latest Apple iPhone. It's happening next Wednesday morning Australian time. Media reports suggest it's actually the launch of 4 new iPhones as well as an Apple Watch with a bigger screen. The next few months is a critical selling season for the world's biggest company, with estimates suggesting it will generate around $120 billion in revenue over the next 3 months. That's the Fear and Greed business headlines for today. Make sure you hit follow so you get it every morning and search for our longer daily podcast called Fear and Greed. There you'll also find our daily interview. Today we're talking about businesses using the pandemic to innovate. Don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter, or go to fearandgreed.com.au. I'll be back later with the afternoon market report. I'm Sean Aylmer. Have a great day.